All right, welcome to this week's What the Heck. I have to stand like in the corner. This is the wrong. Oh, hold this is wrong one. Over here. Ah, yes. All right, welcome to this week's What the Heck. We have Isaac and Improbable Safari. What's up, y'all? Oh, I'm gonna have to figure out something with the camera. I'm gonna keep walking off the camera. This is a bad camera. And that's my dog. Let me turn on noise cancellation.
Special episode featuring X-Dog.
Very loud dog. Okay, let's do quick intros. What's up, Whoop? First of all, who are you, and what's your dream patch cable?
I can tell you what mine isn't.
Yeah, we can start with what isn't.
So I really like ones that are not 90-degree angle. I find the 90-degree angle ones just pile up and get in the way of everything. And I've seen these advertisements. I think it's for tendrils or whatever. They're like
tendrils.
I'm half intrigued to try it and half like, nah, that's just salesmanship. I'm sort of like, they're still going to be in the way. So I really like the straight-on ones and a nice beefy length of barrel so that I can grab it.
Right.
But I'm pretty new to this, so I have a real mix. I got some XL Valley stuff. I have some Hosas. I have something else that I got from a place in Quebec. I forget what it is. Black Market, maybe, if that's a thing.
Yes, I think they make patch cables as well.
So I think the Hosas so far.
Okay.
For that reason.
What about you, Isaac?
Oh yeah, for me, well, I would say I really like. Well, I like actually slimmer cables, kind of the exact opposite. I like So I have one here. This is like the Control New York cables, which I think are the same as Bifaco's cables. They're the same ones. They just are. A little
yeah, I have a few of those. Let me grab one.
So I like kind of skinnier ones, but I also really prefer stack cables. I would patch entirely with stack cables if the tip-top ones were a little more resilient. I think my dream patch cable would be a version of the tip-top ones that are just as small at the front, but that can't fray the way they do and are braided. If someone made braided,
why braided?
They're just cool. They're just nice.
They're just cool. Aesthetics.
Yeah.
Cool. Totally makes sense.
But yeah, so like a braided, like solid stack cable, I think would be my ideal, and as slim as possible. Because the problem with a lot of the stack cables is that they're a little beefy. So if you have a bunch of them in a row, they're kind of, you gotta kind of maneuver around them.
So the slim, Isaac, is that for the same reason as I'm saying that just everything gets in the way?
Everything Well, I really like small cables that are kind of tight because it means that I've got less like hanging everything everywhere, especially because I've been working more with smaller cases, and in smaller cases you can get away with having like really shorter lengths of cables. And so if they're really small, then you can get around controls that are maybe placed a little too close to the jack or whatever. Because I have a couple of very dense modules. Like I have like the Bifaco Percol, which has this grid of like 9 jacks at the top that when I have my case at kind of full power or whatever, is sort of always completely patched, and it's hard to get around that. So
Yeah.
Huh. I have this 7 input output attenuator that I built, just a passive attenuator, but I use it all the time, and it is always packed full, and it is impossible to use the knobs. I'm like going up in underneath to the edge of one. So what are the slim cables that you use? You said it, but I missed it.
These are from Control New York.
Okay.
I think you can see really closely. They do say Control on them, actually. Oh yeah, I can kind of get that.
Something there.
It's these are from Control New York, which is a great store, and I love them. Though I believe, just from looking at photos, I think Bifaco's cables are from the same manufacturer, and just say Bifaco on them instead. They all have a black, like, sort of head to them, and then they're differently colored, and you can get them really small. So those I like a lot. So those are kind of my favorite, like really slim cables. Modular Addict makes some like skinny, like really like flexible cables, which I like a lot. But I found actually have failed on me a little bit. Like I've had quite a few of those where the cable just stops working. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend those unless you're okay with. They're really inexpensive too. So like if you're okay with, losing a couple, then those are good too.
Yeah,
They
the
feel
cables
like
are
silicone.
certainly expensive. I don't know. I have hundreds of dollars of cables probably.
Yeah,
There
no,
was a thing
definitely.
I didn't expect that getting into modular, and you need $300 for the cables or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, every module you get, you need another 3 or 4 cables, and most often you'll end up buying a bunch of modules and then not buying cables to. I mean, heck, I'm sure you've had this problem with the rapid module acquisition and then running out of cables for the modules.
Yeah, I mean, repeatedly, and with Cosmo, it's a lot slower, so you can like work around it fine. Because I have to build every module,
Yeah.
right? And I also came up with a good plan for that, which I'll talk about in a second. But for a Eurorack, like I was like, I don't need a Eurorack because like I had a Eurorack section this big, so I had like I don't know 10 cables or something, like a handful of things that are good for soft pop, and then I also got some Buffaco, some of the Buffaco cables because you can get the really nice cables that you can get really long. And in particular, I was going from like Cosmo stuff to like the Micro Freak, which is across the room, right? Like
that is a huge cable. Oh my god.
So this isn't even the longest one, but I needed some like long cables because for scale, like each of these racks is 80 centimeters wide, so like almost around 3 feet, almost. So that you need that plus like some distance to go to other stuff. So that's why I got these. And the Buffaco ones have been really good. They are, I think, like you said, probably the same. They're
control.
They're black on the end.
And they might be they're about the exact same.
Yeah. And they're nice cables. They're not too thick, not too thin. They're just right. I just got some Moog cables with the DFAM and stuff. And these couple of these are already failing. So
the Moog ones?
Yeah.
Oh god. One really cheap cable source that I've had, and I've not had a single one of them fail on me in, I think I bought them 4 or 5 years ago. So I've had them for a really long time, is Home Depot patch cables. Home Depot sells $1 black patch cables that are the exact same as the IntelliGel / Moog ones. It's one of these.
Yeah.
And these are totally solid. They're $1. They're like, I don't know, 20 centimeters, something like that. Totally solid cables, and they have not failed me yet. So if you want like a lot of really cheap, inexpensive, just like solid cables, look on Home Depot's website. They'll sell more.
It's really solid. Yeah. Also, about tendrils. I just recently got a whole bunch of these, and I showed them off on the stream the other day because I was trying them out. They're the right angle ones. They are notably thinner. It's hard to convey in a video. You're just going to have to trust me. But my theory with right angle cables is that they're really nice if your modular is on its back.
Yeah.
Right? Because the cables are already being pulled down from gravity. So this way you've got a really thin cable that's easy to route around knobs and things so that it stays out of the way and it keeps things close. I find them a little tricky in terms of like I have to actually think about where to place the right angles because they can cover up other jacks, like if there's a grid of jacks or sockets. So I'm learning to use these. I don't think they're my ideal yet, but they are cool and I very much appreciate them. But my ideal is actually chunkier cables. So because I have my stuff all vertical, thicker cables actually hold their shape a little better. So when they're plugged in like this, they just stay like this. They don't fall close to the knobs or anything. So I like them being a little thicker for that reason.
I'll say these are the modular addict cables, and they're kind of wiggly. They're very, very slim, as you see. So that's in comparison to this guy.
Right. And I think slim makes sense if the cables, again, if the case is on its back and the cables are falling down onto it, you want to like
hold their shape really good though.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important because then you don't have to worry too much about cable tangle because you can usually like sort of reach in through things. But the ones Bartok made me are pretty perfect for what I want. Like these are my dream cables outside of, we'll talk about stackables in a second, but I like them. They color match and they look pretty beefy. They've got like a thicker head because it's like a metal
They're like
piece.
metal, right?
Yeah, it's metal.
They look kind of like guitar cable.
Yeah, they look just like a small guitar cable. But the reason I like that is because like that Moog one that fails, when I eventually fix it, it means I have to like chop off one end and hope that's the right end and swap it. Whereas this, I can just like unscrew it and I can slice off. There's a little bit of like Bartok did the extra work and like put some shrink wrap on or shrink tubing on there. If I cut that off, I can either resolder it or like more likely I can like get these, and if this cable's too long, cut this in half, and now I have two cables. So that's something I did a lot with Cosmo stuff, is I'd get longer cables than I needed, because you can always plug in a longer cable, right? And once I had a feeling for how many cables of different sizes I needed, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have more long cables than I need. Let's make some short cables and make things a little more efficient. So that was a fun way to work for me.
You know, speaking of different sizes with cables, can I talk about color coding with sizes? So this is something I've found is that for me, now I'm not really big on like actually like particular color coding or whatever, but I will say something that I really appreciate about, maybe I brought this up last week, but something I appreciate about the stack cables is that every stack cable, the color corresponds to the length of them. Which I like because at a glance I can just grab it and be like, I know about how long this cable is intuitively, and just by looking at its color, because I have a couple cables that are differing lengths but the same color, which is really annoying because I'll fish through my pile and I'll grab one and I'll think it's one length and it will be a different length, and it, you know. So I don't know if you run into that ever, because I imagine with Cosmo you've got yellow cables that are all the same color, but
I don't have issues with Cosmo cables because the lengths are different enough. They're either like 3 feet, like 2 feet, or 1 foot, and there's a couple odds and ends in there. Or I've got some 6-foot cables. They're so different that it's like pretty easy to tell at a glance. And I made some shorter ones too, but those are limited in functionality. I thought they would be a little better, but they're just like 1 foot's about as short as you want to go in that format. I don't have that issue with Cosmo, and I also don't have that issue with Eurorack. Like I'm getting, like when I unplug everything and I'm not bothering sorting it, what I'm doing is I'm putting like, since these are closer, I'll just do these. Like every cable I add into my hand, I'm sort of adding it so that the heads of one side are just like this, and I just keep like doing that until I've got a big bundle. And then when I'm plugging things back in, I've still like got them in my hand or like set them down kind of like that. And I can usually just pick out the length by looking at where the ends are. So
that's fair. That's fair.
That's how I sort of get around that. Hasn't really been an issue. We'll see. I'm still getting into it compared to Cosmo stuff.
Yeah.
The ship on color coding for me has sailed. I didn't do it. I have 4 different lengths, and I have the short ones like from one module to one right beside it. Then I have sort of a medium length that's like 6 to 8 inches long. That's sort of like a 3-module jump, and then I sort of have a bulk of 15-inch long ones, I would guess, and then I have some really long ones. They are all different colors, and they just hang. But they hang in different places. I have, like this is.
Oh yeah.
There's the modular. You can see I have code hooks on the side of it, and I organize my cables that way, which is like super silly, but it works. And so I just know that if I need a short one, they're down over there, and then medium and long.
Okay, and that's similar to what I do with the Cosmo stuff too. Like they're sort of sorted by how they're hanging.
See, I'm not that organized. I like keeping my cables in a giant like Rat King ball next to the thing, and so that's why the color coding helps me, because I can just grab something out of the orb of cables, and I'll know like, okay, that's about that long.
I mean, that doesn't work as well with the Cosmo stuff, so that's why I came up with hanging.
They're so noodly and thick.
They're thick and they're rubbery, so like they're a little grippier. So if you're like trying to pull something out of a ball, it could be problematic.
Yeah. I encounter that sometimes too. probably why my stack cables are already starting to fray is because I keep pulling them out of balls.
Now, as far as stack cables, what I actually want is like, this, but, and I know a couple manufacturers make this, but where it splits off here with a second cable that comes out just a little bit that has the jack socket.
Like
that way it stacks a little bit further away and you don't have the thickness up here as much. So I don't know. That's what I would like to see. And I think it could be like something you could build yourself too. Like the Hosa hopscotch kind of, but with like some DIY sockets, which are bigger, but whatever. I like being able to repair this stuff. So.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I've never tried any of this. My hesitation to the Hosa cables is how damn huge they are at the top. Like that's a Hosa splitter, and it's like massive at the top.
Yeah, they're pretty chunky, and like for most things, I think they're okay. Like I don't know that they're ideal for your rack situations, but for a lot of other things, I think Hosa.
Yeah.
Like, I have yet to have a Hosa cable fail, which is great.
No, they're high quality. They're good stuff.
Like that they stick out
too big.
I like they stick out far enough past the module that I can sort of get to it without having to pull the cable. The XL Valley, like AliExpress ones that I got, the barrel is short, so you're like really trying to reach in there more. So that's about the. I'm pretty new to this, guys. So I'm learning today.
Another thing I want to talk about a little bit to your point, Isaac, about like cables being thin so you can grab them and that kind of stuff just out of the way. I'm sort of getting a little, like I knew I'd be a little frustrated going Cosmo to Eurorack, but I'm getting a little more frustrated at certain modules that are very nice modules, but way too compact, which makes them both unusable from both like the controls, like even with like, smaller fingers, they're still hard. And the jack sockets are like packed so close together that if you did fill it up, like getting the one in the middle is kind of tricky. Like you're forced to like yank on the cable itself.
Yeah. Do you have any example? Not to throw shade on like modular makers, but do you have like any examples of a module like that kind of frustrates you?
Yeah, there's a handful. Let me just take a quick look. Like most of the Erica synths are really good. Noise engineering had a lot of space.
Noise is pretty good about making space too, I find. Like
a couple of the WMD modules are a little tight. I mean, because they're fitting 3 sockets into 6 HP, which is pretty tight in terms of width.
That's about as small as you can go.
Yeah, and then the one that really frustrates me the most to use that I only tried for a bit was the MS22 filter, and I think the Wasp is similar. I can't remember. I'll have to look at it. But like anything where the knobs are in a single column, really close together, because you can't articulate without bumping the knob above or below it.
Yeah, kind of going on the side.
Yeah, and the MS22 in particular didn't have so much a problem with the jacks. Like they were a little tight, which I didn't love, but it was more around the just the usability of the whole thing. Like it's a wicked filter that you're going to want to crank on, and it's
so small.
I know you can do it in 4 HP, but if you made that in 16 HP, I would still like I'd actually prefer that, even though it's like just one huge knob, and a resonance, like there's not much to it, but like you can make things bigger to be a little more usable.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I've always looked at the MS22. I really want an MS22, actually, particularly because of the small size, because I'm really into small modules like that.
It's hard. It's hard to use. Like,
I haven't played with it. I would like to kind of figure out myself, just sort of what my tolerance for that is, because I'll say I don't have that many modules where it's like super super dense. I'd say like the Percol is one of them. Maybe like hold on, I'll just take a glance. All the 2 HP stuff, but obviously it's 2 HP, so I mean, what can you expect?
Well, here's the Wasp. I mean, the MS22 is in the garage, so I can't get it right now. But this is what the Wasp looked like, and I think it's actually a little denser than the Wasp in terms of like the knobs being closer together.
The Wasp seems all right though. Is it too dense?
Yeah, because like if you want to crank on the filter, like I'm gonna hit the frequency. Well, if I'm they've got a level and a frequency. Like if I'm gonna crank on the frequency, which is right in the middle, I'm gonna hit 2 knobs. So I mean, this one's actually better than the MS-22 just because I can actually like move it, and even though my fingers hit it, I can turn it all the way. So it's okay. And another thing about the MS-22, because it is 4 HP, so you have the knobs pushed up a little more towards the top. If you've got a case with an edge that overhangs, that top knob, the most important one, the cutoff, is a little close to the edge, so it's just hard to use in certain scenarios. Like it's an incredible sounding filter, though.
Maybe what you need is if you've seen the Music Thing Control, that module is really interesting because it's just 4 really large, really high quality knobs that you can use to control other stuff. And it's just, they're spaced nice and big, all that.
Well, I got the ADAC 306, which allows me to do similar things. So I can essentially replace the need for that top knob if I want to with just a nice horizontal slider. Or Mass or something can also do it. Mass has good spacing.
The 2 HP lunchbox is a nightmare to me. The 2 HP lunchbox is always... I don't know if you've seen that picture of the 104 HP 6U system of only 2 HP modules. He's kind of the most insane
that would be
UX
impossible.
Nightmare. I've always, on one hand, that's horrible. It's awful. It's horrific. On the other hand, I really want to play with it. I really want to see what it's like.
I 100% agree with you. I don't want it, but I would like to play with it.
I want to the density fascinates me. Just the pure amount of stuff. That's basically you've got the what's the crazy Roland System 700 or whatever, or that's an EMS Synthi 100 where it's just a ridiculous amount of things, but in a reasonable size.
Yeah.
Not any playability, but
I very much like the 2 HP modules I have. I have to cautiously sort of sprinkle them around so they're next to a module, but there's space next to the other module so that I can get in and do the thing. And I find them really useful for utilitarian reasons, as a buffered mult or whatever. It's fine. The mixer, the 2 HP mixer, I find really valuable, but almost impossible to use. The knobs are so close, but they're stiff enough where it's not a huge problem, and it's a volume knob, so it's not I'm changing pitch or anything. So,
I'm putting a picture of it's an entire, it's a huge, really dense thing of just all the 2 HP modules in one case. Which
I can just share it on the screen if you drop the link or try sharing screen. I don't know.
I've got the. Hold on, let me see if it's just on Twitter. Let me DM you. Heck, here it is. It's just kind of the most insane thing I've ever seen because it looks completely impossible to use. But the thing that really scares me about it, really conceptually, is plugging it in. Actually, because I know from installing those modules, I'll sometimes have trouble where the backs of power cables will kind of bump into each other, and it'll become like a rat's nest underneath. And especially if you're in one of those thinner yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's a lot of power supply as well.
Yeah, that must consume a lot of power.
You'd think.
And then also, where are all those power cables going?
Well, yeah, and here's the thing, because I've made, where are you, buddy? I have maybe it's over there somewhere, but I've made some bus cables, right? And because I don't know where it is right now, you're just gonna have to believe me. Let's make that less big now, or just turn it off for a second. So the 2 HP is just putting a couple next to each other, like the cat and the catnip. Well, here's the catnip. The connectors, when they're going from one to the other, they take up physical space, and the cable wants to push them. So I can only imagine, no matter how you connect these, the backs of the PCBs are getting pushed one way or the other with them all next to each other like that.
They must have some solution for it. Some like maybe one of those bus cables where it's got like a bunch of headers on one cable that are spaced like really close together or something.
Yeah, some of the WMD ones, like for expanders and stuff, are the exact length you need. So maybe something like that.
I mean, that's the only thing I can imagine.
Also, how do you like? Let's look at that again. How do you? I've had issues where I want to plug in a module. Like I just get a module and it's maybe like 4 to 6 HP, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't get my hand in there to plug in a new cable, right? Even if I have a clear view. So with this many, I imagine they all need to be connected by like stuff. And they're really like light and easy to move around and fall in between the gaps because they are so thin. Like I imagine like putting this together was kind of a mess.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you need, I would say that's where you really need slim cables just to put, you know, to actually fit stuff in. And I mean, also, I use tall trimmer toppers, but even here, like the tall trimmer toppers might actually be a terrible idea here because then they would be even closer to the knobs.
Yeah, I mean, I Benjamin sent me a few of those, and I'm don't know what to use them for yet, but
I like them. I think they're helpful. They're really good on the Volcas. If you use you're technically not supposed to use them on Korg Volcas, but you can put them on the Volcas. They'll kind of.
I'm not like hating on them. I really like them, and I tried them on a thing, and it was like instantly love. But like I'm trying because I only have a handful. I'm like, okay, which knob gets the fancy top? Like, you know?
Yeah. I also use them on. I use them on my Castor and Pollux, and I have the rainbow ones, which looks so nice. And they're good on that because it's like it's all trim pots.
So today's topic is ergonomics, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's what we're talking about. Ergonomics. Faders also are. I'm surprised. No, there aren't. I'd like there to be more parts-wise available, like tiny little faders, especially for modules like 2HP modules, where it's like those are even if you don't have as much because you don't have as much resolution on a fader. That's something that actually I think Bob Moog said about why he didn't like the ARP 2600 or like his defense for why he didn't ever use any faders is that the resolution on a fader is much lower than the resolution on a knob, so you can get more fine with a knob.
It's also static. I mean, the resolution on both is infinite, right? Like they're both analog parts. But with a knob, if you make the knob bigger, all of a sudden you have finer control. You can't
in less space.
I can't think of a way to do that. Fader. Yeah, I just can't think of a way to do that with a fader without making it physically longer, right? Like. How do you get like I can take any potential out a huge knob and all of a sudden I have a really wide, very like I can be very specific.
With gear reduction or whatever, there's no way to do that. For a fader that moves linear.
Yeah, and so I can see that, but I would say sliders are really performable in the right spot.
That's the thing. I don't think one is definitively better than the other. I think a mix is necessary, but I will say like if you want. If you're talking about something really dense, like having a bunch of knobs really close together and like a grid is awful. Like it's really not nice, and that's something that's like been keeping me from buying any of the Mutable Instruments clones that are like the U ones, where it's just like there's a version of the Elements, right? That's like it's something crazy like 16 HP or something, and it's just this grid of tiny little trim pots that looks no fun to use at all. But if I see something where it's like a long line of faders, it's like you can put them as close together as you want, and they're still really easy to use just because of the nature of faders.
Even that like little itty bitty teenage engineering mixer that's like I don't know this big or something, right? The faders, like no one has complained about the faders. The knobs are a little close together, which like to your point, that's a problem. But the faders are teeny tiny. And just fine. Also, like another really, or I think probably even a better example of that is the Mega FM. Where it's just banks of faders. They're all really close together, but it's completely usable.
Yeah, and like with FM synths especially, where it's like you need a lot of controls if you want the full FM experience, and it's like
Yeah.
a long line of faders does it a lot better than a whole bunch of knobs everywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I like faders. I have behind me. I finally have my MS1 back. I've been playing with it, the Behringer SH, um, and that's all faders. And I love having those for everything. You know, um,
They're really nice. As far
everything.
as like ergonomics go, they're they're hard to beat. Like
I think so.
I don't know, maybe density with knobs is higher or something, but there can be a balance. Like I think both the Icary and the Pizza, having used them both,
Mm-hmm.
well, Pizza less extensively, but I use Icary pretty thoroughly. Um, they're both really pleasant to use, and where there's faders, um, it's extremely performable. Like you don't need a ton of resolution on the Icary's fader, which is the resonance, right? Like
Yeah,
you don't need
but
a
it's
ton. Like
but the other thing is you
yeah,
can kind of do it's performable in that you can kind of do sort of like one thing I've been really looking at is that Battle Pro Fader, the Ginkgo Synthes, which gives you like
mm-hmm.
a really high quality like a DJ mixer fader that you can
Mm-hmm.
use. And the thing
Yeah,
about those is like those you can perform really nicely because it's really smooth. So you can just kind of go back and
mm-hmm.
forth if you want to like
Mm-hmm.
use it like to fade stuff in and out and all that. Or on my Percol, the Percol has faders that control envelope decay, which I think is just the perfect thing because if you want to go from like a really long envelope to really short, you can like, perform that and just go, you know, up and down rapidly, which is
Yeah.
way harder to do with a knob without wearing it out or killing your wrist, you know?
But I will say, like, and one kind of nice thing about modular, like we were just talking about, like if you really like the sound or usefulness of a module and you kind of hate the controls, as long as there's CV over those controls,
Just,
you
yeah,
can
you
still
can,
get that module and use another module to control it. Like it sucks, but you can do that, which is cool.
totally. I've been looking at that 16N, the fader bank thing, where it's just like
Yeah.
16 really nice faders, and that looks really appealing to me
Yeah.
because you can just use that as like controls for various things, and they're nice. They're you know there's nothing around them. It's just like jacks at the top, and that's it.
Yeah. I have mixed feelings on that. I think
Mm.
it's attractive to a lot of folks. You're all
Yeah,
this ergonomics
maybe,
nightmare. I love you too, HP. Please, my April Fool's
yes,
modules. What was I saying? Oh, Data Bank, right?
fader bank. Yeah.
Um, I've used some stuff that I would consider similar to that. So, like MIDI controllers are a really good example. So,
Mm-hmm.
like if you get a Key Lab or something, any size, they have like a bunch of knobs and a bunch of faders. And yeah, you're controlling a different device, but it's sort of in terms of like you can assign them to filter or whatever on your VST or whatever. I did not enjoy that very much
Yeah.
because sometimes their functions shift. Like if you're going through like the Arturia, um, whatever V collection or whatever they call it now,
Whatever. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, the controls will actually change between one preset to the next, which is okay, but it's less predictable. Um, the fader bank I think could be cool, but I'd almost want it like to be somewhat predictable and like so like the one on the left is like always the primary filter or whatever whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if that's like not super modular.
Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of a more DAW concept of having sort of macro controls that you change what they do, um, which you know a lot of people don't like, I guess.
Do they make
Um,
like whiteboard tape? Because I feel like whiteboard tape would be like perfect to
yeah,
like
some
slap on that
I
thing.
know. Actually, Endorphins recently came out with these little 1U tiles that are like whiteboard 1U tiles.
Right, right.
So you can just write on them. I mean, you can get masking tape, like
I mean
just
that's
put
what I
some masking
use.
tape there and
Right,
then
like
write on
anytime
it.
Patch Bay or whatever.
Hmm
Yeah,
I haven't
I
really
don't know
messed.
about that thing for me though.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I've also wanted it to control my Norns, which just doesn't have very many physical controls, and so
Yes.
adding physical controls to things that don't have very many is
Yeah.
another valuable asset of something like that.
Yeah. Um,
I do have an
Improbable.
Arturia.
Oh, go ahead.
I do have an Arturia key lab, and um, I liked being able to sort of use some of those Arturia synths and have a bank of faders and knobs. That is absolutely handy,
Yeah.
and pretty customizable in a way that I really never bothered to do.
Mhm.
I sort of moved on to modular after I bought pretty quickly after I bought the Arturia V collection. There's lots of good sounds in it,
That's very
and
similar
I
to what I did.
occasionally use it. But yeah. So I've got this nice bank of faders here on a key lab that I never use anymore. This is how my life goes.
It's just like because modular is very much about the sort of like one knob per function thing, and that's something that I really appreciate. Even in desktop synths, where it's like you don't have a lot of shift functions, you don't have a lot of all that. Like obviously there are some digital modules where you will get like tons of little macro shift function things, but for the most part, they're like most modules. It's like if that's the filter frequency, it's not going to be controlling the resonance.
Right.
It's the frequency.
Right.
It's only the frequency, and it's like a dedicated knob for it. And I mean, if you've got a huge system where you've got like 100 knobs and 200 jacks, it's like they're kind of discrete and for their own thing, and that's very much the modular's strength.
I tried to stream something for Chip Tune June that was all controlled with PAMs, and I'm trying to switch between like different functions in PAMs while streaming. It was a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
PAMs,
man.
This was a bad choice. I mean, I love PAMs. It works great. It does what it does, but I'm like, from a performance perspective, trying to like switch things around in this thing, and it's like, do I long press? No, I shouldn't have long pressed, and now I'm in the wrong thing. Yeah, that was a good time.
PAMs, from what I've played with PAMs, the menus are actually organized pretty good, but I will not buy a PAMs until they make one with a bigger screen or just at least a couple more knobs. Like what they did with the FX8 Pro, I want like a PAMs Pro that just has a large screen so I can see it, because, as useful of a module as it is, I can't stare at that tiny little thing and do stuff with it. I mean, it's smaller than even like the Ornament and Crime, which I actually have.
And you're not 40.
Yeah.
PAM's CrossFit.
I have a pretty, I mean, my eyesight's okay. I mean, I have glasses, but these are, so I love small stuff, but like, I can't deal with that yet. I don't know. Again, I did just buy a U Ornament and Crime, and I'm going to do, I think, a build stream for that literally later today.
Oh, sweet. I'm very interested. I pulled that one out and looking at the BOM again.
Mm-hmm. I have the whole SynthCube makes a whole complete kit that comes with all the surface mount parts. It's really nifty, and it's all well organized. So
I'm too cheap and stubborn to buy full kits. I never have. I probably should, because then I wouldn't waste all this time trying to figure things out. But
oh my gosh, I hate ordering from Masters so much. If someone offers a full kit, I will buy it, and I have enough parts laying around. I'll supplement the things. So like when I was still incomplete vocal synthesizer, I swapped out all their potential optional ones that I like better.
Something I like about SynthCube is that SynthCube are, I think, one of the only people who do full SMD kits where they will include all of the SMD parts. They're the only people who have like the infrastructure equipped for that or whatever.
Yeah.
And also, the thing that I love that they do, the best thing ever, is they include one or two extra components for every single like tiny little passive. So every single resistor, they'll have one or two extra resistors in case one of them you sneeze and it's gone forever.
Which absolutely happens.
Absolutely invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. Everyone who makes a surface mount kit, manufacturers, if you hear this, or kit builders, whatever, packers, if you are going to make a surface mount kit, just it's like a quarter of a cent to add like two 0603 resistors in. Just put them in. Just put them in. Everyone will thank you for it. Because then if someone loses them, that is the worst feeling ever. If you have a surface mount kit and you're like down a part that is the size of a grain of sand, and that's the reason that your filter won't work or whatever.
You'll find it like the next day.
Yeah, exactly. You'll find it the next day, and then the text is impossible to read, and you have no idea what it is. Like,
oh yeah, there was a part I ordered some kit. I mean, I remember the kit, but I ordered a kit, came from Australia, like with all the parts SMD, and the person who assembled it forgot to put in a couple of Schottky diodes, and I'm not gonna like ask them to ship me like 2 Schottky diodes from Australia, so I just had that like written on my wall, waiting for like months until I had a Mouser order. Because again, I'm also not going to order for like the 2 Schottky diodes from Mouser
$10 of shipping
until I have like a sizable order, you know.
Mouser shipping, man. I mean, I live in Texas where Mouser literally is based, and the shipping is still more expensive than I feel like it should be. It's annoying.
Their credit, like they do get it here pretty fast.
Sure
They get it
I
fast,
always
but
like look at Tata first every time though, because I'm hoping they'll have
Tata's
what I
good.
need.
I like Tata a
Tata
lot.
costs me so much to ship to Canada. It's just insane.
Oh.
It's like 30 to 40% of the order, even when you're ordering $300 worth. Like, it's crazy. You get dinged with the duty and stuff.
I don't. Yeah, that makes
it's crazy. Like, it's
I fully
awful,
agree.
man. Shipping costs. My last JLC PCB order was the highest shipping I think I've ever paid on anything. It was $40, $40 for shipping on like a kilogram of stuff, and it's just like hurts so bad. And like I could have done their cheaper shipping might have been like $15, and then it would have arrived within 60 days, which I couldn't do because that's like I don't think I'll be living in this place for the next like it might arrive after I have left the apartment. So like it's just
on that stuff. I ship to my parents' house. Like they're not close, but like if I think I might be like gone or moving or something, like they can get these weird orders from China.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I bought the SynthCube kit also, is because I bought it while I was still in the UK, but I knew like if I ordered it, then I could just it's from the US, so shipping here would be cheaper.
Yeah.
And all that, but I know it would be here when I'm back. So
improbable. I keep wanting to say impossible.
It's not
impossible Safari. Unlikely Safari. Improbable Safari. You kind of ramped up over the last couple of months. I feel like what's it?
So I'm new. Modular I just got into in like February, or maybe even more recently than that.
Right. Like
it has been a big ramp up.
What would you like to have told yourself? Like, if you could talk to February you, what would be some advice you would give?
That's a good question for everyone too. Just like
that is
if
a
you
good
started
question.
over from the beginning, what would you do differently?
I mean, probably some pretty standard stuff like go slower, but I would have never listened.
Sure.
I sort of knew that already.
I think I know enough about myself to not say that.
I definitely did a bunch of like, what are the modules everyone needs kind of research, and those are the ones I generally am not using. So someone cracked a joke the other day about, you've been into this for a few months and now it's going to be 6 months until you use maths again.
100%.
That is accurate for me. I'm sort of living that. Like I bought it when I had 5 modules. I used it all the time, not to its fullest extent, and now I have many other things that do things, and so I haven't been using it. I don't know that I have any advice. I would say to 2 years ago me, when I was thinking about doing this and intimidated, I would say like, just go for it, man. Just do it. Get into it. I'm really lucky that Forrestine got me into this group. I just ran into them on Instagram, and are you in Voltage in Maine? No, I have no idea what that is. That's our local Winnipeg group. And then very quickly after I jumped on there, it was like, maybe you want to also get in here. And I'm super happy about that. That has been very useful, very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say to that, to the having the group, that's something that I really wish I had when I had started, is like a group of people. I'm only really now getting into sort of all the modular communities, but having just a group of people or talking to people more experienced and being like, hey, like, can I have some advice for like, proceeding forward? Like, what are people using? What are people going to say? Because I'll say I do regret quite a few purchases. I got into it in a really weird way, and I say almost like most of the modules that I bought at the start, I kind of am starting to look to like sell them, because it's like I don't use them anymore, and I would have rather like started with some more kind of unique, multifunction, weird modules, like, you know, buy some mutable instrument stuff, buy some industrial music electronics, buy more make noise, whatever, instead of kind of getting these really weird little basic things that I kind of don't like as much now. And having just like a group of people to bounce ideas off of, like, you know, be like, what are people using? Oh, this thing's cool, whatever. Like, I don't know.
I learned so much just lurking, you know, just sort of watching the conversations that people have.
Right. I think that's probably like my favorite advice is like find a modular group. It doesn't like all of the modular groups I've participated in have been really, really nice. But the thing that got me when I first was like getting into modular was I'd been lurking on like various synth groups. So like some of the Facebook ones and some of the, you know, and I would say there's a huge difference between the two because on the synth groups, it literally doesn't matter what you say. If you say anything at all, you're going to get like matter of fact replies about how you're doing life wrong or, oh, you're having issues with that. Have you tried this completely other synthesizer? Like, completely unhelpful shit.
Yeah,
like pretty much across the board. And modular, like just the other day, somebody popped into the DivKid server, and they're just getting into modular, and they asked like, you know, like, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Can you take a look at this case? Give me some advice. And like the bulk of advice they got was like pretty incredible. Like there was zero judgment. They were asking a lot of like the folks giving advice were asking a lot of questions as one does. So like instead of being like, oh, you're getting started, go buy a maths, go buy a wasp filter, go buy like, you know, like the things that you're supposed to go buy or whatever. It was like, well, what do you want to do?
like, yeah.
Modular.
That's another valuable thing is like, oh yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's what I wanted. I felt like I wanted, because I didn't know. I wanted someone to just tell me what it is that I need to do to start this, which is not the right way to think about it at all. But yeah, I mean, it's a major catch-22 is how do you know what you want to do? I mean, I sort of had...
And like, you don't know what you're missing either. Like right, like when I was putting together the Eurorack stuff, like I've been using a Cosmo modular for a while at that point, and I knew a fair amount. But even just like asking a few questions, like Forstein was like, you're going to need some more mixers, like some sub mixers and stuff. And I was like, you know, like there's that kind of stuff where even if you like know what you're doing, there's always like this stuff that I'm not thinking about or other people. And I like those. Yeah.
I'll say Mylar is he has a really good thing he said about this kind of thing of like, oh, what do I need? Because, and I do agree to him I disagree to some extent, but I agree partially where he's like, the only real way that you can figure out what you are missing is by patching, is by actually using your rack. So, you know, if you're on, I frequent the synth Reddits, like I'm on our modular and our synth DIY. Yeah. And you see so many, it's by far the most common post is someone posting a modular grid and saying, hi, I have X amount of HP to fill. What does it look like I'm missing? And they put nothing more than that. The first question people are like, what kind of music do you want to make? What do you do with it? And it's like, it's such a weird question because it's like, on one hand, someone can look at your thing and be like, oh yeah, you're missing some mixers, or like, oh, you need more attenuators or whatever. But on the other hand, it's like the best way to figure out what you're actually missing is just to use the damn thing and then be like, oh yeah, I'm running out of this space or whatever. Or like, oh man, I really wish I had another filter here or whatever. Yeah. Which I think both approaches are obviously valuable, because sometimes you won't be able to know like what you don't need if you don't know about it. But on the other hand, you know, sometimes you just need to mess with your system and be like, oh yeah, I really am missing X thing just by, you know, patching.
Yeah, Schmooster's like, don't buy a maths.
Don't buy a maths. Don't buy like.
I have mixed feelings, right? Like I think maths, I did the exact path you described, Improbable, where I bought it because I was like, I got this adapter for Cosmo, like somebody made an adapter and I bought it, built it. I was like, I could buy your rack. I'm gonna buy maths because it's like I don't have that in Cosmo, right? and then it was pretty much just gathered dust. So I think the buying it right away and using it right away aren't necessarily going to happen, right? Like, unless
Yeah,
it's
I'll say
like one of 3 modules. But there's like a good 6 months or maybe even a year into it where all of a sudden mass becomes really useful, or rampage. I mean, get rampage. That thing's awesome.
Rampage is cool.
Yeah.
Like math is one of the I'll actually that also kind of happened to me, heck, where it's like I bought a maths and I kind of only used it as an envelope generator for the longest time. I never touched like most of the other controls on maths other
It
than the
was
envelope
slew for
generator
me.
controls. Yeah,
It was
or yeah,
just
exactly.
slew.
It'll be like one
Yeah.
thing where it's like, oh, I use it only for like 4 attenuators, which is like an awful way to use maths. But
Yes.
but going into it now, it's one of my favorite modules because I've started to sort of really do a deep dive and sort of learn all the wacky shit you can do with it. So I think it's one of those things where it's like, should you buy a maths? You might not use maths all to its full extent immediately, but I think it's one of those things where it will come the time where you're happy you had it,
Yeah.
and you'll be like, okay, now I'm starting to figure out like how to use it. It has a learning curve to it, definitely. It's also kind of looking at it maybe less like 2 envelope generators and 4 analog whatever, and more like it is an analog computer. It's building blocks to make other things. So you can make maths you can make it a bouncing ball. You can make it like a compressor, whatever. It can do a lot of weird stuff, and it's kind of those fundamental building blocks where you can use it to supplant other things and sort of
Yeah.
but it definitely has a learning curve. It's like there's a high to use like a video game term. It's like a high skill ceiling for maths.
Yeah.
Where it's easy to pick up, but it has a lot of depth to it if you really want to get into it.
One thing I'm sort of looking for when people are asking, like, well, what should I get, etc. Like, I think there's like a few genre. Like, if you're really a beginner,
Mm-hmm.
there's a handful of things that might have hooked you. One, you might want to make like a really nice monosynth. You might want to make like a sort of like chaos machine, right? Like something that is a little more organic and harder to like control. Or like maybe you want to make a drum machine or just like an effects box, right? Like those, I think those cover a huge amount of uses. And I started with like, I want to make a killer monosynth, and I still love mine as like a monosynth, right? But then once you have that base and you've like got those things figured out, like I think it's easier for me to get my head around like, okay, let's build a monosynth. Like this is what I need.
Mm.
And then once I've got those, it's like, okay, let's get weird with this. Like, what can I do that's like monosynths can't do, and like start repatching and doing weird stuff with it, right? Like to really understand things. So I like understanding that because like somebody's like, I want to get really weird and make like really bleep bloopy, like I don't know, like the make noise. There's a specific system that's pretty chaotic because it was shared. Or like the soft pop. Like I love those machines because you're having like a conversation. Like the machine has soul. Because it's back and forth. So like I like to understand that because then you can sort of point them to like, not necessarily like, I think if you're building that, you need to buy X, Y, and Z. You can be like, hey, check out these things. It might not have heard it. Like they could be helpful. Like Benjamin does that to me all the time, and I very much appreciate it.
The other thing I'd like to mention about this is boring modules. Buying utilities and weird little things that are totally boring on the surface but are really, really useful. I think it's something that like a lot of beginners might not do. Like people might be like, oh yeah, I've got like a ton of sound sources and they've got like a bunch of filters, but they don't have that much like modulation or like mixers and attenuators and stuff like that, where it's like there's some really interesting things in the utility realm of Eurorack that can really kind of bring stuff out. And like I'm starting to get into this, like buying like a Turing machine or like the Turing machine on the surface isn't like terribly interesting, but once you kind of start realizing like, oh yeah, step modulation is the coolest thing ever and you can use it sort of everywhere, it's like you kind of get into the flow of it.
It's cool. Buffered molts, like that's one I will like, that's a hill I would be okay dying on.
Yeah.
Is like, yeah, I did a lot of out of box molting and like passive molts all over the place and stuff like that. But I think having even just one buffered molt that has bipolar LED on it game changing because you don't need data. You don't need like all these other visual. You don't need an oscilloscope. Like a single buffered molt not only splits your signal accurately, but like you could it's a 1 pixel oscilloscope. Like it tells you what's happening visually. So like it helps debug. Like it helps do a lot of stuff. So huge fan of buffered molts.
Yeah, I recently bought my first buffered molt, which was I bought the winter bloom hydrogen because it's really pretty. That was also part of one that I almost requested Thea to make that one because I was like I really want a 1U buffered molt that can fit in Pulp Logic or IntelliGel and that isn't the Synthrotech one. And she was like, I'll make a buffered molt that's not the Synthrotech one. And it's nice because it's high precision, it's got a bipolar LED, it's 1U, it's just cute, it looks pretty, and it's just like, it's solid. I bought it for pitch molting because I was realizing if I was in a really small system and I only have 1 or 2 sources of pitch CV, stack cables really fuck with tuning. And so having a rock solid high precision buffered multiple is really, really useful for that. Even if you don't want to use space for it, that's why 1U is great because it's a great 1U module. It's a 1U buffered molt.
I'm about to get a 1U case, and I think you just sold me on that.
Yes, buy the Winter Bloom Hydrogen.
Yeah,
if you want,
I think you just sold one.
It's also available as a surface mount kit that is packed pretty well.
Okay, well maybe I just got sold on surface mount kit.
You can also like I just use them for debugging all the time. Like it is my go-to debugging tool. Like sometimes you get some modules that are a little mysterious and you're not quite sure what that output's doing, so you just like that into the buffered molt,
and then you get the light, and it's like the light.
You know what it does.
Yeah, I wish
I
Max
really
had
like
more
to see.
LEDs.
So
I wish. Yeah.
You like
Sorry,
what?
go ahead. I like to see. I like to be able to see things.
Visual feedback is very great. I think I try and buy almost exclusively modules that have lights on them. I think every single module in my case has a blinky light somewhere, just because the visual feedback, aside from it looking really cool and wanting to like Richard Devine, like glittery everything, it's also just really, really helpful to have visual feedback on what you're doing.
I agree.
Especially with like LFOs, all that. I wish, and one complaint I do have about maths, if they ever made a maths V2, is to just put more lights on it. Like there should be a light on every attenuverter. There should be a light on all the CV inputs. There should be way more lights on maths.
To give you an idea, I was looking at Cosmofying maths, and there are over 50 holes already on maths.
Make Noise can do the under PCB thing. They can do it. They did like the more
they can make it happen. Yeah.
One a black maths that has under PCB lighting and has just way more LEDs everywhere. Then I'll be happy.
What would they call it? Like calculus or something? Wouldn't be as controversial because it's not math plural.
Oh yeah, the UK. I always wonder why they use the UK kind of terminology. Because I mean, that's something
it's correct. It's accurate.
Yeah.
That is one that like once the logic was explained to me, I was like, okay,
it's mathematics, and so you're abbreviating that to maths.
Yeah.
I think they should just call it maths, spelled with 2 F's.
But right, like also, this is very tangential. Mathematics implies that it's plural, right? Like, what's mathematic?
That's a good question.
Math.
One math.
What's one math?
Well, it's one of those things where it's like it's not necessarily plural, like pants, right? You have a pair of pants.
Yeah.
Like, why is it a pair of pants? There's only one thing there. It's 2 legs, I guess. But like,
each leg is a pant, right? I don't know.
Is each leg a pant?
But shirts have 2 sleeves, but it's only 1 shirt, so.
Yeah, it's like exactly. It's like if you have a long sleeve shirt or a jacket or whatever. It's like that's one thing.
I don't know. English is dumb.
English language.
Yeah, let's not go there. What else?
Let's call the next one English, not maths.
Improbable. What's like a recent module you got that you're like really fired up about still?
So I got nonlinear circuits cellular automata
Oh, nice.
kits that I built. Pretty jazzed about that one. Haven't sort of figured out. So it puts out 3 different stepped CVs, which then I generally feed through a quantizer and make weird melodic changing stuff because that's what I do. And it has a grid of gates that so I feel like that there's probably some rhythmic thing that I could try and figure out what to do with these gates that I haven't gone there yet. But that's kind of the most recent one that it gave me that sort of, this feels like synthesizers in a way that really pleases me.
Yeah, that's
whatever
awesome.
that means.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Is that the Game of Life, like the Conway's Game of Life one?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's just awesome. Yeah, new modules are always fun.
How about you, Isaac?
I'm really excited about my Ornament and Crime. I went over, before I left, one of the last things I did was Marty on the Discord. We hung out a little bit in person, and he has 2 of them in his case. And I just started messing with it. Like, it just is the coolest thing ever. It's my first module that actually has a screen on it, which I've been hesitant to buy any modules with screens, but I just think the Ornament and Crime does so much. I bought it. The reason I bought it, that kind of pushed for it, was I bought a Turing machine, and I realized I don't have a single quantizer, and it is kind of the fanciest, most space efficient, most affordable quantizer for what it does, and so it's got that. But I didn't realize it can do drums, it can do Euclidean sequencing, which I've never had a Euclidean sequencer before. It can be 4 more Turing machines. It can.
That's cool.
It can just be like ADSRs, all that stuff. And so I'm just really, really excited about it because it looks like fun, especially now that I'm moving to these small boxes. Like, I feel like I could probably play with this thing now. I could play an entire techno set out of that little box, which is just a fascinating prospect to me. The menu diving was a little frustrating just using it, but I think I can learn it. But just the sheer amount of stuff it does, even if it's just like a set it and forget it quantizer, like, I love that, and I'm really jazzed about it.
That's awesome. The techno set just reminded me, like, I think the box size does matter, because I think, like, the Richard Devines and folks have all talked about, like, the larger your box, the longer your set can go. But, like, I think you can do a pretty extensive or kick-ass techno set with very little.
Yes, definitely.
Like, the DFAM is I was only using that the other day just by myself, and I was like, shit, like,
you can play an entire thing with just a DFAM,
because every single control is performable, like every single thing.
I need to borrow my friend Nicholas's DFAM a little more, because maybe I'll see if he wants to trade for some other modular, if he'll let me borrow the DFAM, because it's such a neat little thing. But I also just really love, it's like a puzzle to me, where it's like, if you have a small box, like, so mine's 120 HP, and it's 60, 60, and then I have a 1U row, right? And just taking the modules I have and figuring out what fits where, and like how many things I can cram in there to still be useful. Like, do I want to sacrifice more space for a cooler filter? Do I want to like put like how multifunction do I want my modules to go? And like all that is like it's a fascinating little puzzle to me, and I love figuring out like, so like I can, if I'm really clever with it, right, I can set up like a ducking kick drum thing on the entire master of it and like mix that all within it, and it's such a fun little puzzle to kind of figure out all those little things and use every module to its very fullest extent. So that's something I find, and I've started recommending to people, like, if you have a really big case and you're starting to feel sort of shocked by like how much you have, like a really good thing to do is either use a smaller case or just take stuff out and just try and see how much you can do with like less modules, because you will be surprised at how much functionality you can squeeze out of just a couple things. You have to get more creative. I'm always inspired by Enthusiastic Electrons, that one video he has where he just does an entire ambient thing with just the Mimeophon and nothing else, and like that's so cool. That's amazing to me. Just squeezing every little bit of functionality out of that module.
Yeah, I'm a giant fan of performable modules, and that's definitely high up there. There's a lot of modules that it feels like they weren't designed, like they're designed for space over performance or something, and like those do not interest me at all.
Yeah.
And like some I'm like, just you just have to try that like seem really cool and just end up like being good, but not what I'm after, you know.
Yeah, totally. Make Noise is really good about performable stuff. They're good about some of them. But I mean, from the ones I've got, like they're good about making the important controls nice and big and clear of space.
Yeah, they do space very well.
They do a UX thing kind of with their modules that I find where it's sort of like the outside ring of the module almost is where they put all the jacks, and then on the inside it's only knobs and controls, so that every knob kind of has more room to breathe.
Yeah.
But they can still place jacks in an intelligent spot.
Yeah, and if you've got a bunch of Make Noise and modules like next to each other, it works really well because like sometimes it, depending on your placement of the module, like you're going like 1 centimeter over, you know, to the next jack.
They always put inputs and outputs on the top and bottom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Audio along the top now that I think about it. Kind of.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else. I don't. We got really weird into.
What about you, Heck? New modules that you have that you're really excited about?
Oh yeah. Let's see.
Because you've been getting. I've been seeing a lot of this cool stuff you've been getting.
Yeah. So I'm very excited. I just got Theremin. And these Liquid on the computer modules that I ordered a month ago because UPS lost that package. So I got different ones than I was expecting, but they still sound just as good, so that's not a problem. Yeah, so that those three, and then I also got the lunar module, but like really,
the APA thing.
Yeah, but this is like the thing I'm the most excited about because like these oscillators with built-in tuning cannot be topped. Like there's no nice way to say that, but like because of the built-in tuner, because of the octave switches, like it's really easy to do fun stuff with them. I love them. I do have other analog oscillators and stuff that I've tried, and like I don't know. Also, the pizza I'm very excited about.
The pizza looks like a lot of fun. It looks kind of. I was kind of struggling to figure out what it actually does because it's an oscillator, but it's like a weird additive FM thing.
Yeah, it's like it's an FM oscillator, digital, that does a few things and has 3 different outputs. So you can output like a square wave, an octave, up or down. I think it's just actually up, octave up output, which is interesting, and the main output. And it gets kind of gnarly, sort of noisy-ish sounds. You can do some really smooth stuff with it, but the thing that's really nice is the ergonomics of it so far. Like they've designed it so this encoder up here, or this, I don't know, it's not an encoder, it's a potentiometer, is by default an octave switch.
I like that a lot. That's something I wish more people did when they have digital modules.
Yeah. And then it can be cycled to be other things. So you can use it for fine tune, but by default you can't like bump the tuning on it, which on the what was here before was the Godspeeds, the Endorphins Godspeed, which sounds great. But I kept bumping the tuning knob and having to like hit the tune button and go to A. Like it was very inconvenient. This is just solid.
The octave switcher thing has been a feature request I've been bugging Winter Bloom about for Castor and Pollux because I really wish Castor and Pollux could, because it's just a software change and it totally could do that. And so I think it might come down the line. Hopefully.
I would really like to see that in Castor and Pollux because my feedback for Basil would be like, if you watch this, I wish the octave switch was limited to 5 octaves. It's a bit higher than that, which makes it a little tricky to perform with. But I just got to get the hang of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, Castor and Pollux is nice because it's got that editor, so you could.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Ostensibly, you could change it to be whatever you want it to be, which would be super cool.
But I have to find a home for FM, like digital FM in my performances. Like I haven't had anything like that, and typically I don't like the sounds of that. But I'm sort of being swayed, so I'm trying to find a home for it. So I'm like, I have a lot of sound design ahead of me with that one. With the look on my computer, like I know what the fuck I'm doing with those. So like,
yeah, I mean, like
those are like good to go, like day one. This one like is just me like with headphones, slowly rotating knobs, trying different filters, trying different like, is it an accent piece? Is it something that's a lead? Is it like, you know?
I bet Pizza could make some pretty gnarly, weird percussion if you used it kind of like a BIA.
It could be easily percussion, but it loves modulation. Like there's really nice sweet spots you can find. So yeah, I'm having fun with that one.
Nice,
but
nice.
I think the most excited I am are about the computer ones. Because what that means is right now with this setup, like I could grab that box and go down to Denver and I could play with that. Like I could make a set happen.
Because I guess you have most of your Cosmo functionality is now basically all in there, yeah?
A fair amount. It's not all one-to-one, but I was really missing like a solid bass combo. Like I've got distorted leads and stuff like that, but like I really wanted a nice bass, and the best basses that I've personally made are really stupid simple. 2 analog oscillators that are not hard synced, 1 octave apart, and into a nice filter, and golden.
I use Castor and Pollux for bass a lot, especially if I want like the detuned sub bass, the kind of, you know.
Well, the problem with it, Castor and Pollux to me is that I like it so much it's not coming out of this case.
Oh, fair. That's actually fair. Yeah.
So,
do you have is it Cosmoified? Is yours?
It's living in an adapter thing. It's living in the adapter next to Ikery, and neither of those are moving. Like this is I'm pretty happy with the Earth modules I have. No longer, because I didn't need maths in this setup. So Castor and Pollux next to Ikery, next to Rample, next to the Lunar module. So like the Lunar module is hooked into the phone. So like,
oh yeah, you get even more.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can take this apart if physically possible, and change this output to. I'll have to throw a battery or something in here, but this output to send out a gate when the hook is off, which is doable.
Oh yeah.
So that I can trigger the. Is that muted? I don't know if it's muted or not. But trigger. Hold on, it's not plugged in. Just a second. It's not plugged into what we're hearing because that's what I'm currently using. Let's try here. Might be loud, hopefully not. But I don't know why you're not working. That's okay. It makes a Quindar beep when you turn it on. Like it's got a couple of gate inputs, so I'd make it so like when I pick up my phone, it could, if I want to, beep and turn on the it also simulates cockpit noise.
That's so cool. You need to stream with that thing if you haven't already. I've been really curious to hear it because it's like such a weird.
I did a setup stream with it, but it needs more exploration. I haven't.
Tell me when you're streaming at that thing because that's just
for sure.
Absolutely, like the most like total nerd like Earth module you can get is the lunar lander.
You know what module I would? Here's a good final end question. What module you recommend to anybody across the board? Like just one module.
I would say for me, let me take one more glance. I'd say it's a tie between 2 kind of utility modules. One of them is the A160-2 Dupfer, the 4 HP clock divider they have.
Yeah.
Because it is infinitely useful for getting a lot of modulation out of one clock. It can do even straight divisions. It can do weird prime numbered things. And it has an individual output for every clock division, so you can send. It pairs nicely with anything that likes a lot of gates. It's a really quick way to get a lot of gates. So that thing. And then the Bifaco Percol has so much functionality in a small space. It works in a small
That's
space.
that's 2 modules. We're
Yeah, that's two, but that's all.
Okay.
But the A160, I would say, is the bigger one. Is that clock
Okay.
divider? It's like everyone can use a clock divider, I think.
Okay. And what about you, Improbable?
Yeah, for me, it's probably NLC's triple sloths. Everybody
Ooh.
needs that kind of modulation. So everybody needs some kind of modulation. I think that's an interesting one. I have 2 of them, and I think I'm going to keep 2 of them. I regularly max the one out. I love it. It's my modulation source. I also have Oct, but I sadly use it not nearly so much as sloths. So I think my answer would be sloths, triple sloths.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. I want to look. I'm gonna look more into triple sloths.
I like they make a one sloth. That is one.
They do, which I also have.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually building 3 triple sloths now because people ask me about them and are like. Plus, I'm also building a little case. I might need one. So I just
yelling out, yelling out a bunch of modules.
I love that module. So I've got 3 on the bench.
SMR. Shmoo, I wouldn't recommend the SMR to everyone, but I would recommend the SMR in general. I love my.
I would recommend the maze to anyone that's in Westworld specifically.
What is the maze?
I don't know. It's like anyway. The module I would actually recommend, like thinking about Guitar World a little bit, like if somebody's getting into getting a guitar, I want my 2 recommendations are like pick one that you think looks cool. Like if it sounds cool, good. and I think there's like some element of joy that a lot of this stuff brings us, and some of that is aesthetic for me or just like stupid fun. So I think the Theremin module one, like if I had known that exists, that would probably have been my first Eurorec module, sticking awkwardly out of the middle of Cosmo. But like, is there a better like CV source that like anyone that's not modular can like understand? Like, oh, when you move your hand, a thing happens. Like, it makes you smile because you're doing theremin stuff. You can make it do pitch if you really want to, and like, like all that shit, which also fun, and it looks cool. So like that would be the one I would recommend.
Nice.
Oh, light sensor's a good one too.
Light sensor, yeah.
I've had trouble with light sensors though because I find you need to be pretty close to them. But there are exceptions. If they're like a full panel, they're a little more sensitive. But
if you're getting a light sensor, you need a strobing flashlight with it.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this one up. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about before we hang this up?
I just looked at Modular Grid, and Steady State Fate has released a hi-fi version of the Vortices mixer, which doesn't have any of the saturation things, and I think a lot of people would be excited about that. Because that was a deal breaker for a lot of people on the Vortices, I know.
Heck yeah. I see a lot of Vortices in racks lately. So
it looks fun.
Yeah, I mean, some folks I think would really like the hi-fi. I actually am totally fine with mixers adding some sort of saturation and things like that. Like the Dude does some nice saturation if you crank things. All right.
Yeah, I always think of the meme, the Mother Desiccant meme. That's like new SSF module has like 7 VCAs.
Yes. All right. I guess I can try to play this out.
Yeah.
Let's see what the subharmonic on it as the last time I turned it on. Oh. Feels really low and no, it's just this headset.